So this lady right here, Shayna Bellows, who's the Secretary of the State for Maine, has unilaterally decided for about 1 million eligible voters in that state that they cannot choose Donald Trump on the ballot. Now, of course, this is for the primary, but if they're saying that Donald Trump committed an insurrection, this is going to go for the general election too. Now, this may seem like another big victory for the Democrats, but it looks like Shayna Bellows made this decision on really shaky ground, even to the effect that CNN is calling her out for it. So I have a clip to show you where CNN's going to say Shayna Bellows probably shouldn't have made this. I have a second clip to show you where Shayna Bellows is gleefully talking about her decision to do this. And then I have a third clip to show you where they're going to impeach Shayna Bellows for this decision. Let's check out the CNN clip first.
Were the processes, were these hearings fair? Did they comport with due process? And I think there's a question there with regard to what Maine did. Because if you look at the hearing, and she details this in the ruling, they heard from one fact witness, a law professor. She based her ruling on a lot of documents, but also YouTube clips, news reports, things that would never pass the bar in normal court. She's not a lawyer, by the way. It's a smartly written decision, clearly consulted with lawyers, but this is an unelected. She's chosen by the state legislature.
She's elected by the state legislature.
Elected by the legislature, but not democratically elected. Not a knock. That's just the way it's set up in Maine. And this hearing, look, it doesn't have to be a criminal trial. We don't have to have all the protections. But I think the argument you'll hear from opponents is, one, not up to the states to do this. This is why we have all different decisions from all different states. And two, the procedures were not up to snuff.
So even commentators on CNN are admitting that the procedures that this lady used are not up to snuff. She does not have the power to make the decision for 1 million eligible voters that they cannot choose Donald Trump on those ballots. And you don't have to be a detective to figure out why this lady did this. Just take a look at the two pictures up there. She's really close with Barack Obama and Joe Biden. This lady is a liberal through and through. So in this video clip, check out her talking about this decision to remove Donald Trump off those ballots.
It's a very detailed decision. We lay out why under Maine law, the Secretary of State has the authority, indeed the obligation, I'm duty bound to make this determination. Laid out that the record demonstrates that, in fact, the events of January 6, 2021, which were unprecedented and tragic, were an insurrection in the meaning of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And finally, in reviewing the facts presented, the evidence, the law, the history, we determined under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that Mr. Trump engaged in insurrection.
So this lady is clearly not biased at all, right? I mean, she's not doing this because she hates Donald Trump. She's not doing this because she's a liberal, right? She's not doing this because she wants to eliminate political opposition. This lady is a saint. She's checking her bias at the door, and she's looking straight at the 14th Amendment, Section 3, Article 3 of the 14th Amendment, and she's saying, man, he just violated that insurrection clause there. Oh, yeah, the one that was written for the Confederate officials, the Confederate states that actually fought a civil war against the North. That's what Donald Trump did on January 6th. I mean, we have video of the guy telling everyone to march peacefully, to respect the men in blue. He literally tweeted out, everyone needs to go home, right? Yeah, this is the guy, right? And now because this lady overstepped her bounds in her attempt to take down Donald Trump, a representative from Maine, John Andrews, is filing a motion for impeachment against this woman.
Let's bring in Maine GOP State Representative John Andrews, who filed a motion to impeach the Maine Secretary of State. He joins us now. John, good morning to you. I don't think before this, many people outside of the state of Maine knew who Shayna Bellows was. So let's start by you telling us about who she is and your effort to impeach her.
Well, in Maine, the people do not elect the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, or the Treasurer. They are chosen by party insiders in the legislature. So it makes the position inherently political, and Shayna Bellows should know that. She should be going out of her way to be nonpartisan. But with this edict, Shayna Bellows has unilaterally disenfranchised 300,060 Maine voters with this partisan move. Our nation is a republic. Maine is made up of citizens and not subjects in the duchy of Shayna Bellows. But keeping people they don't like off the ballot is nothing new for Democrats. They did it to Abraham Lincoln. They did it in the Jim Crow Reconstruction South. Over the decades, the Democratic Party hasn't really changed. They've just gotten much better at public relations.
John, you used a keyword there, disenfranchisement. And if you look back, a Twitter, now known as X post from Bellows in January of 2022, she said this: the fundamental right of any American citizen to vote freely, fairly, and to have their vote counted is the premise of our democracy. The Constitution and Bill of Rights are not values to be compromised away, but yet she is not giving those voters the right to vote for their candidate, which it appears that Mr. Trump is the front runner to be the nominee in your state. So is she consumed with, drunk with power of her office, or is there some way you can connect those two opposing statements?
Well, they've repeatedly cited the 14th Amendment, Section 3, and under Shanna Bellows' new standard, you could argue that President Biden be barred due to Section 3, with the statement of giving aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. I'd argue that releasing billions to Iran and selling our strategic oil reserves to Chinese interests could qualify that if no convictions are required under Shanna Bellows' new rules. And that's why this is such a dangerous game that she's created.
So a lot of important points there. Number one, I want to talk about the number of registered voters that John Andrews was talking about. I think he's only talking about the registered Republican voters in Maine, because I do believe that there's more than 360,000 because he's just talking about the primaries there. But if you have a Secretary of State like the decision they made in Colorado or the decision they made in Maine, if they're going to take this person off of the primaries, then it also precludes that they're going to take them off of the general election as well. It's not like you could just be like, hey, we're going to remove this insurrectionist off the primaries, but we're going to include them on the general election as well. That is not their goal here. Their goal is to remove Donald Trump from all voting across the board, primaries and general election. He brings a good point up about the Secretary of the State's position in Maine being a political one, meaning she is not directly voted in by the voters. And because of the politics in her decision alone, she should really remain out of this entirely, which is one of the reasons why John Andrews is going to bring about an impeachment hearing against this lady. And then also that tweet that they brought up about the fact where she says voting is like the fundamental right to a democracy. It's interesting that the Democrats are always pointing to Republicans as the ones who are trying to disenfranchise your right to vote. You know, things like Republicans want you to show your ID when you go to vote just to make sure you are who you say you are, rather than like a simple signature, or the fact that Republicans want to make sure that absentee ballots are definitely that person, you know, that there's a signature with them, that the date is correct on them, you know, simple things like this. Here, she completely disenfranchises a million people in Maine, just with the stroke of a pen like that. Obviously, this is not going to last, not at all, but it shows the true colors of who these people are. These are the real enemies of the United States of America. Honestly, I believe that this is going to fly in their face. I believe all of this is going to open up the eyes of many Americans, and they're going to realize the truth, at least for a little bit, because, you know, it always flips back. But I think this is going to give even more popularity to Donald Trump. But what do you all think about it? Leave your comment below. I'll catch you on the next video.